Hello and welcome to Headlines Special. With the fallout from the tragic crash of an Azerbaijani passenger jet near the city of Aktau, Kazakhstan, after rerouting across the Caspian Sea from southern Russia, continuing to intensify, Baku is now said to be preparing to appeal to an international court unless Moscow takes responsibility for the incident. Deeply dissatisfied with Russia's muted response to the airplane crash, Azerbaijan also appears to be scaling back its relations with Moscow, with some of its latest steps being perceived as testifying to this proposition. Baku has recently officially notified the Russian government of its decision to terminate the operations of Россотрудничество, Russia's cultural and humanitarian agency within Azerbaijan, quite often seen as a vehicle of Russian soft power. Interestingly enough, the shutdown of the Russian House Cultural Center also coincided with Baku's decision related to the closure of USAID in Azerbaijan, widely referred to as American soft power tool. At the same time, it's worth noting that Azerbaijan has sent another shipment of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, with the total value of the assistance provided since February 2022 reaching $40 million. As long as its strained relations with Moscow is concerned, Azerbaijan has already defied the conventional wisdom suggesting that once Russia is deploying its peacekeepers somewhere in a sovereign territory of a post-Soviet country, those peacekeepers, those troops, remain there for some considerable time. Back in 2023, by a combination of the application of military means coupled with some concomitant diplomatic efforts, Baku restored its full control over the remainder of the Karabakh region, subsequently achieving what many thought would be impossible in the post-Soviet space, the withdrawal of Russian troops ahead of time, with Moscow being unable to do anything about it. On the 27th of December, Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a rare apology for the tragic incident, but stopped short of admitting the facts that Russia was at fault. And now Azerbaijan expects a proper apology with admission of the guilt and other concomitants stated by the Azerbaijani president. On the whole, a growing number of analysts now seem to believe that the ramifications of the 25th of December crash could potentially mark a significant pivotal point in Russian-Azerbaijani relations, with wider implications for the South Caucasus and other post-Soviet nations, diminishing Russian influence. Joining me now are Rusif Husseinov, director of the Topchubashov Center, Baku, Azerbaijan, and Lyuba Shipovich of Dignitas, joining us from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to both of you.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Rusif, my first question is to you. We are familiar with the preliminary report issued on the 4th of February. It is not conclusive, but it does entail some elements which would give rise to some assumption. Russia has so far refused to accept the Azerbaijani version of the events and did not show receptiveness. What is your reading of the current state of affairs involving Azerbaijani-Russian relations?
The current relations between Baku and Moscow, I would describe as a standoff. How these relations will develop further will be up to the Russian side. On the one hand, it seems uneasy for the regime in the Kremlin, who is built on the tough image of the Siloviki faction, to eat a humble pie and accept an own blunder. On the other side, the post-2022 Russia does not have a luxury of affording more hostile countries in the neighborhood, such as Azerbaijan. It's pretty possible, it's just my speculation, that the authorities in Moscow may concede to Azerbaijan at some point by punishing some officials, either true perpetrators or simply scapegoats for the sake of rapprochement. However, currently, the Azerbaijani Airlines Flight 8243 became included in the infamous list of civilian aircraft shot down by the Russians. Other most notable incidents happened with the Korean airliner in 1980s and the Malaysian airline MH17 in 2014, which was followed by no admission of guilt whatsoever. The Russians may try to continue this pattern. However, Putin, in his telephone conversation with President Aliyev, made a Schrödingerian apology, which was an apology, but not an apology at the same time. And also, let's bear in our mind that Putin, president of Russia, back in 2000, he did not even apologize to his own citizens during the Kursk submarine disaster. So the Azerbaijani side could somehow break this pattern, but it did not still satisfy the officials in Baku. Let's see how things will develop further.
So what we have heard is that Azerbaijan is reportedly preparing to build a legal case to be taken to international court. I imagine that international court must be International Court of Justice. And we also understand that Russia apologized, but without admitting its guilt. I think the wording of that apology was the concern, the regret over the tragic incident in Russian airspace. That's what I remember from that information, which was circulated first, I think, on the 28th of December. Luba, this unfolding crisis echoes previous legal battles over downed civilian airliners, including the case of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, and that happened, I think, back in 2014. On the basis of the way Russia first reacted to the tragic incident which took place on the 25th of December, what is your reading of Russian modus operandi?
Yeah, as we see on current events and on all previous events, Russian regime never admits their fault. They always trying to put fingers on someone else. Like when it happened with Malaysia MH17 flight, they were telling that it's some kind of civilians in Donbas region somehow got access to air defense system book and shut down the airplane. Also what happened with occupation of Crimea when Russian told it was not them, it's just some kind of green man. So it's just sequences of how they act, and same happened with Azerbaijani plane when they never admitted that it was their fault. They played that it was somehow it was mistake of airplane crew or something, that it was not their air defense system. So I wouldn't expect from Russian to admit this time. I think they will be just playing that it was not them, and I don't think there will be any official apologize or something from Russian side, and it's actually it's very sad that Azerbaijan learned in a hard way that it's not possible to be partners with current Russian regime and trying to play some kind of neutral positions after shutting down Malaysia airline and after all European air companies stopped flying to Russia. I think it was clear that there is no way to be partners with Russia and expect from them to pay any attention to civilian lives during the full-scale invasion. So I think Azerbaijan learned the lessons, but unfortunately in a hard way.
Rusi, what do you make of what Luba just said? Of course, currently there are tensions between Azerbaijan and Russia, and you describe them as standoff, and we don't know what will happen later. And it looks like that sort of intensification of this standoff will continue for some time. Although it is widely known that Azerbaijan is the only country in the South Caucasus which has never helped Russia circumvent sanctions levied against it, with Armenia being quite instrumental in this regard. But Azerbaijan has also been quite often criticized for its good relations with Russia, particularly before this 25th of December incident. How would you evaluate Azerbaijani-Russian interaction in the wider scheme of things? And what do you make of that sense of criticism that we tend to hear when we talk to different experts from different world, which sort of expect more from Azerbaijan when it comes to Russia.
Yes, indeed. The Azerbaijani-Russian relations are really complicated. On the one hand, we have never raised any openly hostile relationship towards Russia. We never raised any EU or NATO membership aspirations, which would definitely irritate the regime in the Kremlin. On the other side, the Azerbaijani government has always enjoyed a lot of flexibility and independence when it comes to foreign policy priorities. They never aligned themselves with the Russian side. They never become a part of the Russian/Eurasian structures. At the same time, they did not join any anti-Russian blocs. So it was a very complicated game. As I said, Azerbaijan has not developed economic independence like the neighboring Armenia, for instance, from Russia. It gives us a lot of political independence and bigger room for maneuver. Also, last year, we managed to kick the Russian troops out of Karabakh. There is no more foreign boots on our soil. In fact, many experts in Baku right now believe Russia needs Azerbaijan more than the latter needs the former. Isolated and in need of communications, the Russians are in need of reaching southern warmer seas, Iran and Turkey. Both those countries are accessible only via Azerbaijan. In this context, the Russians need to somehow accept the geopolitical significance of Azerbaijan. In this very context, regarding the standoff between the countries, it may not actually matter too much whether the Russian side assumes the responsibility, makes an official and unambiguous apology, and agrees to pay compensation for the plane crash, as Azerbaijan has already won this standoff against a big and, softly speaking, not so polite neighbor by making a lot of noise, not pulling back, and standing its ground.
Thank you, Recep. Liba, as you know, Azerbaijan restored its control over the remainder of the Karabakh region in September 2023. As I'm sure you know, there were Russian troops stationed in Azerbaijan, and they were, under the circumstances, they found themselves compelled to leave Azerbaijan, according to mutual agreement, of course. And there were many people, and Recep knows it better than anybody else, back in 2020, when that 10 November declaration was signed, were very much worried that those troops there would stay ad infinitum, perpetually, without any intention of leaving at a later stage. But Azerbaijan, throughout 2020-2024, took certain actions within its sovereign borders, de facto recovering its sovereignty over the rest of Karabakh eventually. There's a school of thought that by means of applying calibrated diplomacy, without in any way antagonizing Russia to the extreme, without allowing your own territory to be used for anti-Russian purposes, but yet retaining your independence, not helping Russia circumvent sanctions levied against by Western countries, it is possible to sort out one's domestic affairs. It looks like Ukraine has failed to achieve this purpose, and the confrontation there will continue. Do you think, on the basis of Azerbaijan's example, is there anything potentially Ukraine could have done before 2022, February 2022, or anything else Ukraine could still consider as a possibility to be taken into account on the basis of what Azerbaijan achieved back in September 2023?
I think like what happened in Azerbaijan was possible, like mostly because Russia couldn't afford to have like active war in more than one region. I think they were very surprised with Ukrainian resilience, and they didn't expect Ukraine to stand more than 3 days, as they said, and because they had to focus fully on fighting in Ukraine, they lose focus on other regions, and I'm really happy for Azerbaijan to took this chance, and hopefully other countries like Georgia also could use a chance to get back their lands, like Ossetia and Abkhazia. As for your question regarding diplomatic way, if it's possible to have to solve any issues with Russia in diplomatic way, I don't think it's possible with the current regime until Putin is in the Kremlin. Ukraine tried multiple times since 2014. We had 3 Minsk agreement. We had multiple negotiation talks, but as we learned, Russia just didn't keep their promises, and all promises that they do, they just never fulfilled, and it just posed to Russia, and it's just providing them time to reorganize their troops and attack you again with new power. So I don't think it's possible without like active fighting to solve any issues with the current Russian regime, with President Putin as like totalitarian leaders. Totalitarian leaders are not the ones who could be your partner, who could sit on negotiation table and to make any promises that then would be like fulfilled.
Rusif, yes, please, please.
If I may add my own 2 cents on this very subtopic, the withdrawal of the Russian troops from Karabakh, Azerbaijan, went largely unnoticed in international media. However, in my opinion, that was a huge accomplishment and should have been celebrated internationally, because we managed to kick the Russian troops out of Azerbaijan even before their formal mandate expired. And if I am not mistaken, even back in the early 90s, we were the first post-Soviet countries who actually forced the Russians to pull out of the Azerbaijani territory. So this should serve, hopefully, as a source of optimism or inspiration for other countries, such as Ukraine or Georgia or Moldova, which suffer from the Russian-backed secessionist movements.
Rusif, one more question to you. We understand that Azerbaijan is currently engaged, as officials are saying, protecting its dignity. This airplane crash should be properly investigated, and the perpetrators must be punished. That's Azerbaijani view. My question to you is that even the process of protecting your dignity is also involves some calculated risk. Bearing in mind that, as you said earlier, it appears that Russia needs Azerbaijan more than Azerbaijan needs Russia, and bearing in mind that it is Azerbaijan which is currently intensifying the extent and gravity of this standoff, in the grand scheme of things, what are those benefits, geopolitical benefits, that Azerbaijan may eventually derive from this perceived standoff when it comes to its regional objectives? Because Russia needs Azerbaijan for many reasons, we understand that, and instead of accepting the version of events suggested by Azerbaijan, Russia does not want to issue the kind of apology Azerbaijan wants. What will be some form of gain that Azerbaijan may derive from this very, very intricate standoff ultimately, you think?
First of all, we gained international sympathy. It was an unfortunate event that took so many lives. However, many experts had earlier speculated there could be some sort of Russian wrongdoing, and these speculations, unfortunately, were proved true. In our situation, yes, Azerbaijan's geopolitical significance is huge and will probably be elevated in the coming years because of the importance of Central Asia. Because as we see how Western actors, Western powers, they are now pivoting towards Central Asia, and Azerbaijan will serve as a natural bridge. And when many other actors, they deal with Azerbaijan, it's also not only about Azerbaijan per se, but also Azerbaijan plus Turkey tandem, because these two nations, they are usually serve as a pair. They're usually finding each like themselves on the same page. Therefore, antagonizing Azerbaijan may also harm the other actors' relations with Turkey to some extent. And as I said earlier, Azerbaijan can also offer an access to southern seas. It's Iran and Turkey, and for the Western actors, it's a natural bridge to Central Asia.
Luba, Azerbaijan has recently sent a new shipment of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Azerbaijan has been supporting Ukraine in this sense since the very beginning. What is the sense about Azerbaijani view on Ukraine's territorial integrity in Kiev? To what extent what Azerbaijan does in relation to Ukraine is appreciated there?
Yes, in Ukraine, Azerbaijan is considered as a partner, especially a partner in some economic stuff, like gas and oil, and a number of Azerbaijani gas companies are operating in Ukraine, and they're considered as alternative to Russian oil and gas. But I think it's also important for Azerbaijani politics to like clearly stand on which side they are, and especially it's important for Azerbaijani people first of all, because not stopping flights to Russia from Azerbaijan. We know that only like few cities were removed from air map. It's like playing with the evil. Like you don't know when next time a surface-to-air missile could hit Azerbaijani plane. So having this lesson already, I think it's up to Azerbaijani politics to decide if they're willing to protect their own people and like stop flights to Russia.
Rusif, so my last finalizing question is going to be to you. And Luba, you're also more than entitled to comment on that. Do you think there could be any role potentially in the fullness of time? We are aware of those clandestine secret US-Russia talks about Ukraine, and some people are concerned that Ukraine may be subjected to the situation wherein some sort of external decision could be taken by US and Russia, and then it could be imposed on Ukraine in such a way that Ukraine's territorial integrity could be a matter of transaction. And these talks are underway and speculations are being made. But do you see any role for Azerbaijan and Turkey in terms of mediating between Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, Turkey, if you remember, in the very early stage of the war, it was March 2022, if I'm not mistaken, when Turkey offered its venue for the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations. I remember that some voices in the Azerbaijani expert community also thought Baku, due to its position, its equidistance from both Western and Russian/Eurasian structures, could also serve as some sort of platform for the dialogue, not only between Russia and Ukraine, actually, but also between the Russian and Western leaders. Because in the past, I remember that Azerbaijan's capital was chosen as a place for the communication between the top military leadership of NATO and Russia. So we already have accumulated this experience, and hopefully the war in Ukraine would come to an end at some point. And if there is an opportunity for Azerbaijan and Turkey to play, hopefully this chance will be exploited.
Thank you. And Luba, please.
Yeah, I think South Asia and Azerbaijan in particular could play a really important role in like mediation between Ukraine and Russia. But I think it would be possible after falling Putin's regime. So with the new democratically elected president, I'm sure like Ukraine and Russia could sit at the table and establish new neighbor relations. And with the help of countries like Azerbaijan, I think it would be possible.
Well, thank you very much to both of you. We discussed a range of issues today. We started with the post-25th of December Russia-Azerbaijan tensions, with Rousseff describing them as a standoff with some possible implications to follow. We also discussed the nature of Azerbaijan-Russia relations in the context of wider dynamics within the South Caucasus, circumstances involving Ukraine. So it was a very wide-ranging discussion, and I'm most grateful to both of you for your contributions.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
This were Rousseff Husseinov, director of the Topchubashov Center, Baku, Azerbaijan, and Luba Shipovich from Dignitas organization, who joined us from Kiev, Ukraine. See you very soon indeed.